Namaskar and welcome to this exciting new episode of Sattology Debunking Mythology show. And today we have a very, very special guest, my old friend, and his not old friend, young friend, and a very prominent one from the United Kingdom. And before I tell his name to you, I'm going to just share one aspect. Satology means the science of truth. It's a true antonym of mythology. Sat means truth, and myth means imagination, and logos is a Latin word. So when I combine this term, Satology, it means the science of truth or study of truth. Our whole attempt at these sessions is to bring out an archaeological, astronomical, and as well as historical accounts of ancient history connected to the whole world. And so our attempt is to try to be as much scientific as possible, and little bit here and there we may miss out something. Do point it out. So without delay, let us welcome Shri Manish Pandit and Shivant to the show.
Namaskar, Aditi ji. It's a pleasure as usual to be back. And to all the medical doctors, especially, very special good morning. Whoever is watching from, I believe there's 2 or 3 different medical universities which are actually online. So, thank you very much for actually coming here. And my background is that I'm a nuclear medicine doctor now, but I used to be a surgeon, and I was a surgeon for nearly 5 or 6 years, quite some time ago. And well, it's given me a bit of a skeptical attitude, which is, I think, very useful when you start going into different claims for the Mahabharata war, especially, which is going to be what we are going to talk on today. And Aditi ji, thank you very much for calling me to your show. And the difference which I have got this time is because I'm training quite a lot of researchers to actually take over the work, because one should always prepare people for the future, and especially young researchers. So we have got Shivansh Mehrotra, who is from the Indian Institute of Technology, and who is a Vishwanath Fellow and is a postgraduate. So he's going to also help me in this particular instance, which is the first time I think it will happen on Satology, which is, I think, very useful.
Right.
And if anybody has any queries, I don't know if there's any way they can communicate them to Aditya ji. So we can keep like 5 or 10 minutes just at the end where some people can sort of interact and ask questions, especially if nobody else has questions, at least the heads, whoever is watching, they may have questions and they may want to ask. So before we get on to this, this particular episode, I want to base it on Balarama's pilgrimage. Now, Balarama's pilgrimage, Balarama, as we know, is the brother of Sri Krishna. And, for the more esoteric aspects, I think we will rely on Aditya ji to tell us more a bit later. Because I'm sure he'll be able to talk for more than 2 hours on Balarama and what Balarama means and all these sort of things. One of his names is also Haldhar, because he carries a plow. Is the idea? Is that strong as well? Balarama, literally meaning mighty armed. You see, and one who is having tremendous amount of physical strength. He is considered as an incarnation of the Sheshanaga or Ananta on earth, basically. So he's actually considered as the literal incarnation of the serpent on which Sri Vishnu is reclining, not sitting, but reclining. And these are very interesting things. You see, Balarama does not actually take part in the war. And there is a reason for it, because he gets quite annoyed. And what happens is that he asks Sri Krishna whether Duryodhan can have more than just the army and those sort of things, and have a little more I suspect in terms of strategy is what he was probably wanting. And Sri Krishna does not, allow that to happen. At which point, I think Balarama says that he doesn't want to take part in this war, and he says, I'm going to go off to the pilgrimage. Now, I want to point out a few things basically, and I think we should go straight to the slides so that we don't waste too much time, and we actually get everything in, because otherwise we can just witter on. So let's just start. So itihasa, I always like to point out, my first slide is normally this, is that it actually happened. It means that it actually happened. And this is different to the suspected word myth. Now, it is not that the myth will not have aspects of the myth which are true, but the point is that itihasa is a more complete word, and it says that it actually happened, and that is important. There are three types of dates of the Mahabharata war. Essentially, just to give you a brief overview for all those viewers who have not seen this sort of presentation before. And those are the dates that assume. So, first type of dating proposals are those which have a belief, not necessarily a scientific proof, but a belief, and based on one verse of the Harimamsha Purana, that Sri Krishna departs at sharp Kali Yuga. And the assumption there is that Kali Yuga is 3102 BCE, which is the date used even today in Indian calendars as Kali Yuga, as the start of Kali Yuga. And so the war is then assumed to occur around 36 years before that. And there's a lot of candidates for this particular date, which are primarily five, which is 3137, 3138, 3139, 3140, and 3143 BCE. So this is one particular belief type of dating. And the belief there is that how can Kali Yuga, which is a very bad and base age, which is the age we are living in now, how can Kali Yuga ever be there when Sri Krishna is still on earth? That is the belief factor in it. And a lot of the daters who assume this, therefore, are extremely, they're very devout believers in Sri Krishna. And in general, they don't want anybody to disturb that belief. And I sometimes, respect that belief in the sense that it's a bit difficult to change people's beliefs. You can show something scientifically, but not change beliefs. They're the dates which assume that the archaeology doesn't allow a date beyond 1.5 to 2 KBC, and that is wrong, because we have already shown in previous shows that there's the Yamala Arjuna tablet, and now recently the Sinauli chariots, and all these, so many things are now coming out. So this archaeology, anyway, I don't believe that is a defining factor anyway. There's the triangulation type of date, which is the date we have, which is dependent on the positions of the slow-moving planets, Saturn, Jupiter, and the retrogression of Mars. So no year of the war can be taken into account if it does not show Mars retrogression. So if Mars retrogression is not there in that year, then it is an impossibility. And Mars retrogression, when we are talking about Julian calendar years, and we are talking in terms of the way we interpret the years from January to December, that must occur at least in January, February, March, right up to May. But it cannot occur much later than August. There are various reasons why that is the case. So that is one aspect. And the prime example of this is our date, which is 3067 BC, which is perhaps the only scientific date dating of the Mahabharata war is this particular date. It's not a recent one, but the theory I have is a modified theory, a completely new modified theory of this particular date. And 3067 BC, the important thing to remember about this is that it is originally devised by Srinivas Raghavan. And if you look back at that man's work, he was a professor of mathematics from Chennai University in 1969, and he came up with handwritten calculations of Julian day to Vedic calendar, and they're absolutely perfect calculations. Then you got the different types of dates, which are dates beyond the farthest acceptable limit calculated astronomy and mathematical wise. And those are the 5K, 6K BC, 7K BC, 8K BC, 10K BC. And I've had numerous people who have argued with me online that why cannot we have a 1 million years BCE date for the Mahabharata? And they have been extremely dogmatic about it and even called me names on it. But this happens, because that's what happens when you don't stick to science, you see. So there's a belief, amongst a lot of Indians who don't have much reading of the texts, who, because, Sanskrit is a very difficult language. In any case, if you are not used to reading Sanskrit, if you have never ever read the texts, if you have never ever, gone into any of the epics, then any date is possible. But we are telling you that basically 3K BC is essentially the limit to which most reasonable people will accept that the Mahabharata would have occurred. Um, and the derivation of 3067 BC is from scientific, archaeology, and astronomy points of view. But I want to concentrate on the astronomy bit of it. And let us go to the first sort of thing, first sort of reference. And I want to first read out the reference. Alakshaya prabhaya hina paurnimasischa kartikim chandro abhudni varnascha samavarne navastale, which is verse 23 from chapter 2 of Bhishma Parva. And it points out that there is a Karthika Purnima, or a full moon occurring near Pleiades, basically, which is the constellation in the sky, a fixed star in the sky. And this is occurring before the war. Okay. And it is in fact being pointed out by Vyasa to Dhritarashtra. The narration is by Vyasa to Dhritarashtra. And he's basically saying that there is a Karthika Purnima which is occurring, and it has occurred before the war. Now, that is a definite assumption by anybody who is reading this text will say, well, he means that it has occurred before. So, I mean, he's not saying it's going to happen. He's saying it has happened already. So it has happened before the war, the 18 days of the war can ever take place. So what is the danger now? If we decide in any Mahabharata war proposal to say that this should be taken in the war timeline. So what happens? So here's my question, and I don't know if Aditya ji, we can sort of have a short discussion on this one. What happens when one ignores the observation of Kartika Purnima explicitly mentioned by Vyasa, which happened long before the war? And the prime example of this is the 5561 BCE proposal, where we say basically what happens. And I'm just pointing out what is happening over here, the paradox. And what is that paradox? Point A, the Pandavas are in Upaplavya on that day, because there's a separate reference in Vanaparva which points it out. And that is a good distance away from Hastinapura and from Kurukshetra. And they're sleeping nicely under that Kartika full moon in the night. Sri Krishna is in Hastinapura with Karna at the same time. And the Kaurava army is now in Kurukshetra with nobody to fight. If we say that that full moon is occurring in the war timeline, as some researchers have done, then this is what we'll end up with. There is no Sri Krishna on the battlefield. There is no Arjuna on the battlefield. None of the Pandavas are on the battlefield. The Kaurava army is now on the battlefield, but they cannot fight anybody because there is nobody there to fight. So this is a highly important problem which faces certain war theories. Because if you try and suddenly, because you see that particular full moon of Kartika, which is near Pleiades, will only occur at a certain point in your year. And if you start going way back in time, then this is what happens, that you suddenly land up at a situation where the Pandavas are dissociated from Sri Krishna, are dissociated from Karna, and are dissociated with the Kaurava army, and Kurukshetra, Hastinapur, and Upaplavya, 3 places. So all the people who must be in one place, you can show that they are in different places at that same time, right? So this is an impossible war proposal. This fails one of the most easy tests to apply. Which is I call it the Mahabharata Karna Krishna paradox, because Karna and Krishna are riding together on that day. You see, and they are not in anywhere near Kurukshetra. So this is very interesting. You see, when you start looking at Mahabharata researches, and this is something I found out around a year ago, which is very interesting. So in fact, there are a lot of memes which go around on this particular topic on Twitter, right? So I always tell people to ask their astronomer if they ignored the observation of Karthika Purnima, which should be before the war, and somehow or the other, if they have put it in the war timeline. And this was done, the origin of this particular theory was from Shri Vartak, from my own hometown of Pune. And he made this mistake. And it is a very easy mistake to make. It is a very difficult thing, this Mahabharata dating anyway. This is number one. Now, the number two I want to show is the actual timeline of the Mahabharata. So in 3067 BC and in what is in the text, what is the actual verse we are talking about for Balarama's pilgrimage? There are two verses actually, not just one verse, but let us go to it first. So the red arrow, which has just appeared in your screen on the left-hand side, is the start of the pilgrimage. And if we go like this, I can show you the exact moon phases for each and every point. And now you can see on the left-hand side of your screen, the big yellow arrow which has appeared, where I'm showing you November 1st, a Pushya Nakshatra, where the pilgrimage has to start. And then I'm continuing further to the third Pushya, which is occurring. That is the Punarvasu, but then the Pushya will occur just after that. And then comes that big arrow, which is the waning phase moonrise, which has to occur in the timeline. And then finally, right at the end of this, it is covered, I think, by the other motifs. But you can see clearly that is where the war should end, and that is where the pilgrimage should end, and that has to be Amavasya, but that we will cover on some other day. But what I want to simply cover is the nakshatras. So I am showing you the moon phases in this particular fashion, and this is a very very difficult thing to actually show and prove for any war theory. And what is my point of doing this? So one of the first things which I want to come to just before I do that is, did Kali Yuga occur during the Mahabharata war? This is my next sort of point. That's the next sort of focus. And again, Aditya ji will be very interested to, maybe come in on this particular conversation. So, when Bhimsen injures Duryodhan mortally on the thighs, Balarama and Krishna have a dialogue.
Right.
And Sri Krishna says that Kali Yuga has arrived.
Yes.
And what is that verse? In the third sort of part over here, you can see the third line. You can see Praptam Kali Yugam Vidhi Pratidnyam Pandavasya cha. He says very clearly, Sri Krishna is explaining to Balarama that Kali Yuga has already arrived. Now, some people, there are two slightly different opinions on this. One is that the Kali Yuga has arrived just before, right? A day before maybe. And the other opinion is that Kali Yuga has arrived just maybe a few years ago. Mm-hmm. There are two slightly different opinions, but both opinions say that Kali Yuga has arrived. Now, there is a very interesting corollary which we can derive from this, because you remember I showed you all those other dates which we talked about just a little while ago. So let me just go back to that. So if we go back to that, then you will find that these dates, 3137, 3138, 3139, 3140, and 3143 BCE. Remember that when we are talking in terms of the progression, if Kali Yuga is occurring at 3102 BCE, and these dates are occurring before that, and the reference which I just showed you is saying that Kali Yuga is already arrived, then all these dates are automatically debunked. That's the end of all those 5 dates. 3137, 3138, 3139, 3140, 3143 BC are gone straight away. And there is a problem because the reference is there. There are 10 more references minimum, 10 more references. So 11 references which are pointing out straight away that Kali Yuga is already on at the time of the Mahabharata war. So this is a very interesting sort of a paradox again, right? So I'm just pointing out the various things. So this is that particular verse, which is from Shalya Parva 59:21, right? So it means that those particular war proposals, 5 of them, are straight away, they don't pass this test. So I always say any attempt at dating of the Mahabharata must not ignore this verse on Kali Yuga, especially the ones which are taking Kali Yuga to start at 3102 BC. If they are taking it to start at 3102 BC, then how is this possible? Right? So there is the next thing. Now, what is the next set of pitfalls? So if we say that we do not corroborate the start and end nakshatras of Balarama's pilgrimage, or we flip them, which I'm going to show you in a moment, which Shivansh will show you. What do we have? The verse is over there. Chattvarinshaddaha nidya dvechame nisratasya vai pushyena samprayatosmi shravane punaragataha shishyorve gadayudham drishtu kamosmi madhava. So, chattvarinshaddaha nidme nisratasya vai. So, chattvarinshaddaha nidya dvechame nisratasya vai. So, 2 and 40 days must pass by. Pushena samprayatosmi shravane punaragata. The pilgrimage must start at a Pushya Nakshatra, Altarf, and must end at Altair or Shravana. Now, the verse is very clear. There is another verse which says, Rohinye gate shure Pushyena madhusudana. So that also says that he goes at Pushya Nakshatra. So, what will happen if we remove or don't prove the start point as Pushya, or we remove or don't prove the start point as Shravana? Which I'll show you hopefully today, that 3 of the war theories have done exactly this. And imagine the amount of disturbance to the moon phases and the nakshatras which is going to happen when I reverse the timeline. If I reverse this timeline just to suit my theory, then that is what kind of disturbance is going to occur. And so this is the next thing. And I'm just going to show you this verse over here. So it is described as starting, Balarama's pilgrimage is described as starting on a Pushya Nakshatra and ending on a Shravana Nakshatra in 42 days. The 42nd day is also the 18th war day, and that is where he returns. Therefore, the 18th war day is a Shravana Nakshatra and Amavasya or close to it. So the problem is that 2 timelines you fail if you flip the nakshatra sequence backwards, right? Or if you try to do it backwards. And then the question does arise. Aditya ji will be, interested, I think, in this one. Aditya ji, and you may like to answer. So suppose, I say that, well, instead of starting on Pushya, let us start on Shravana. Then Aditya ji once told me, well, then why start on Shravana? Why can't I start on Uttarashada? Why can't I start on Purvashada? Why can't I start on Hasta? Why can't I start somewhere else? Correct. Yeah, Aditya ji, am I correct?
Yes. We did that discussion. Yes.
Aditya ji, who has his, he loves to put some very fine scientific points, but in a comic sort of sense. And so he said, well, then if we are going to ignore all the start and end points anyway, then why don't we just take any point we like? And a lot of researchers have done that. Unfortunately, a lot of war proposals have done that. And I'm sure Aditya ji will agree with me when we say that sort of thing means that war proposal has failed on multiple points, because you fail the nakshatras, you fail the moon phases, because once you flip the nakshatras, the moon phases are gone, nakshatras are gone, the direction of the pilgrimage is gone. You might as well I can change that verse because I know a bit of Sanskrit. So I can say, Hastena samprayatosmi, for example, instead of Pushyena samprayatosmi, starting on Pushya Nakshatra or Altarf, why not take it to be Hasta? Why not take it to be Puro Falguni? Take it anywhere you like, I can say Aryamanena samprayatosmi, and I can even say Aryamanena punaragataha. Let's change the 42 days also. Let's take what we like. So we can't do that. That is very important to realize, that Vyasa's words Are we going to be faithful to Vyasa's words? And you'll be surprised at seeing the number of proposals which do exactly this, what I am pointing out over here, that they actually flip it around. And not only that, they say that no, we are proving, we are giving a logic for it that it is impossible. It is not impossible. It is not impossible, nor it is the fact that it is happening every year or something like that. It is simply that it is possible only in certain points, in certain years. And those years have to coincide with so many other things. It becomes almost an impossibility. And that is why it is important to choose your year of the Mahabharata, what proposal you want to put in which year, very, very carefully. And so, just to illustrate the point over here, so Usain Bolt, if we were to remove the start and the end points of his 100-meter dash, or for a 200-meter dash, if we were to remove the start and end points, then you can start from anywhere and end anywhere you like. And you may even want to run backwards, which will be quite a comic relief if it were to happen in the Olympics, for example. So, but if it is not okay for a 100-meter race, are we going to say it is okay for the Mahabharata? So, exactly, it is not. So, this is important. Or we can make the start the finish point and make the end into, we can make whatever we want into whatever we want. So, let us not do all those things. I call it the flipping the nakshatra for a problem. And that introduces a number of pitfalls. Once you do that, it introduces around 10 or 15 different things. Now, I want to just show a couple of other things before we start getting into each and every date with the software. So, the timeline of the war and pilgrimage are intertwined. Pilgrimage starts on Pushya, ends on a Shravana. Right. This is the way it should be. And this is the way we have proved it to be in 3067 BC. We'll show you that in a software in a moment. I want to ask a question, and I don't know whether Aditya ji will like again to come in on that one. How many Pushya Nakshatras are there prior to the war and in the war? And this is for all whoever is watching this, because this is something which has plagued all the Mahabharata researchers, barring I think 5 researchers and 2 actual researches, 2 years. So option 1 is only 1 Pushya prior to the war. Option 2 is 2 separate Pushyas prior to the war. And I don't know if any of your students want to reply to this, but before they reply, they can reply whatever they want. But I will tell you something very interesting. And again, Aditya ji and me have had this discussion, offline at one point, because there are 2 separate events which are connected in 2 separate different ways and separated by 27 days approximately. So is it 1 Pushya or 2 Pushyas? And Aditya ji will tell you that there are 2 Pushyas before the war. And there are indeed 2 Pushyas before the war, not just 1. Okay. And just for your viewers, so Aditya ji, you and me, you remember that Duryodhan says that the peace talk should fail. And that occurs on the first Pushya.
Yes.
And you know that the second Pushya is that of Balarama's pilgrimage. And there are a few events which are occurring in the middle of those 2, which are, given in the Mahabharata text, and a few events which occur after that. And so that particular thing which is occurring ensures that there are 2 separate Pushyas. But what has happened is, because the word Pushya has been mentioned, researchers have mistakenly taken both Pushyas to be the same Pushya. And when you do that, what happens? So when you obliterate the 27-day gap between the 2 Pushyas, then that is a very serious error again in the Mahabharata. Right. And that is the error, by the way, which plagues every researcher who has tried to do this opposite nakshatra business, flipping the nakshatra business, turning Pushya into Shravana and Shravana into Pushya. So again, Aditya knows about this because, the Oracle fount of quite a few of these things. He's more interested in the esoteric part, but he knows about this as well. So, how many theories realized? Only two theories out of 110 realized it. One of them is the 3137 BC theory of Dr. Saranathan. And the other theory is the theory of Raghavan, Achar, DK Hari, Dr. Manish Pandit, me included, who realized that there are two Pushyas. And if you don't realize there are two Pushyas, what happens is you actually, it's difficult to show exactly what happens, but I'll try and show. If over here this Pushya is starting, this has to start at 27th day around from Duryodhan's refusal of the peace offer. But imagine, and so from here, then you go 42 days to war ending at or near Amavasya. But basically, the war end will be on the same day as the pilgrimage end. So the war ends on the same day as the pilgrimage ends. And the war starts basically somewhere in the middle of this, but the pilgrimage starts on a Pushya Nakshatra. And that pilgrimage, 27 days back to it, is Duryodhan's refusal of peace. Imagine what catastrophe you cause if you were to take the refusal of peace on this day and pilgrimage starting on the Pushya Nakshatra, on some other nakshatra anyway, on this day. Imagine what happens. That is the catastrophe, specific catastrophe, which occurs when you start taking the reversal of nakshatras. Right. So that is what happens. If you start taking it going in the opposite way, instead of starting to take it in the right way, basically. So instead of going from Pushya to Shravana, if you go from Shravana over here to Pushya in the opposite direction, then in the ulta direction, then it creates a huge problem. So without much ado, what we will do is we'll go to Shivansh. So Shivansh will show us what is the right way of doing it in. So just 3067 BC is the first one we are going to show you. We're going to show you the software open, hopefully. So Shivansh will try and share his screen. We'll just see. Hopefully that will all succeed. Otherwise, I have got the software on my computer as well. But it's always nice to have a younger researcher actually start showing all these things. So Shivansh, you want to activate your microphone and then
So should I share the screen, sir?
yeah.
Okay.
So let me get out of this. So let me do a stop share. Right. And now I think you'll be able to share the screen.
Okay. Is it visible?
Yeah. You're starting to come on. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. This one is the 3067 BCE proposal, and for the settings of this proposal, we have used November 1 minus 3066, and the calendar date is in Julian. Okay, place, for example, we have used Delhi. So this is the day when Balarama sets out on the pilgrimage, on this day.
Perfect.
Okay. So with these settings, I have just created a chart, and here we can see that the nakshatra is Pushya. So Balarama sets out on a Pushya on this day.
Which is what is required.
Yeah. Exactly.
By the text. The text requires him to set out on a Pushya and then come back on a Shravana Nakshatra. So we'll show you the Shravana Nakshatra in a moment. So this is Jhora, by the way, which is a free software.
Yes. The war ends on 12th of December minus 3066. And on that day, the nakshatra we can see clearly. It is here, nakshatra Shravanam.
Perfect.
So,
and if you count from November 1st to December 12th, it is exactly 42nd day. It is the 42nd day when he comes back. Perfect. Yeah.
Correct.
Keep going. Yeah. Very good.
Okay. So now should I show for 5561 first?
Right. Now let's go to one of the other popular proposals, which is 5561 BC. So let's go to 5561 BC. As you can see over there, Shivansh, if you go back one step and just show them that how many of these dates you have got over there.
Yeah.
So you can see he has got around 7 or 8 dates over there, which are from my second book, which is Dissection of Theories. But anyway, we'll go for 5561. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So the last war day of the 5561 BC proposal is November 2,
Right.
and it's a Pushya. Nakshatra is Pushya.
So he has flipped. So he has flipped the nakshatras, basically, which we were just talking about a little while ago, that the nakshatra should never be flipped because it completely screws up the moon phases for the year. It basically changes the words of the Mahabharata text, which you should never do. Right?
Correct.
Keep going.
So if we go 42 days before this day, so that would be the day of September 22, when Balarama would have set out on pilgrimage. And that day, we can see the nakshatra is Uttarashadha. But if
Right.
if we can give a benefit of doubt of even one day, then also it's max to max Shravana on the next
Right.
day.
Right. And it creates the paradox we were just talking about of Usain Bolt running in the opposite direction. So
Yes.
for a 100-meter race. So
Yes.
this is the problem, that there's a reversal of nakshatras which has occurred in this particular theory. And that reversal of nakshatras is not the only thing which has occurred. There are multiple other problems, but the main problem is also the confusion of first and second pushyas as one pushya. That is the other problem which has plagued this theory, which is therefore debunked. And the other problem is, of course, that the Karthik Purnima will then occur in the war timeline, which is again a huge, huge blunder. So we have just shown you this, just to show that what kinds of mistakes. So 3067 BCE shows you perfect pilgrimage timings. 5561 BCE or minus 5560, which we have just showed you, flips the nakshatras. We'll go to 1793 BCE next.
Okay. So in 1793, the 18th day of war is
Before we go to that, the important thing which I want to point out, so this particular researcher, who's actually a well-known researcher in Delhi, he has what he has done, you see, because they want to take Gregorian calendar settings, they have taken all their settings in Gregorian calendar, and we are simply converting it to Julian. That's the only difference we are doing over here. We are converting it to Julian calendar settings. They are absolutely the same settings what the researcher has used. Right? Yeah. Go on, Shevansh.
Correct. So on November 15 of minus 1792, we can see that the nakshatra is Pushya, and this is the 18th day of the war, by the way, when Balaram has to return. So actually, he has to return on a Shravana nakshatra day, but in this theory, he is returning on a Pushya nakshatra day. So which is totally wrong.
Basically flipping or reversing the nakshatras. Basically, whatever is there in the text, we are basically in this theory they are flipping it or reversing it. So Balarama, instead of starting on Pushya, is ending on Pushya, which is again wrong.
Yes. And on this day, if we calculate backwards, 42 days, October 5 comes to be the day when Balarama sets out on the pilgrimage. And this day, as we can see, is Shravanam. So Shravana Nakshatra, he sets out. So this is also flipped. So
Flip the nakshatras or reverses the nakshatras is completely wrong. Basically, again, the moon phases will be wrong for the whole year. And the same mistake has been made of confusing the first and the second pushyas in this theory also. Because that is almost a typical mistake which is being made whenever somebody reverses the nakshatras. Okay? Yeah.
Yes.
Very good. So second date debunked on we are just taking Balarama's pilgrimage at the moment. But there are other things we can take. We can go for 3163 BCE next, I think.
Okay. Okay. So last day of the war in 3163 BC is November 11 minus 3162. And here also we can see the same problem is there, that the last day of a war is a Pushya Nakshatra. So here where my pointer is, we can see the nakshatra is Pushya.
Perfect.
So
again
this is
wrong.
Also flipped, again wrong.
And if we calculate the nakshatras. Yeah.
Correct.
Keep going.
Yeah.
Very good.
If we calculate backwards, so backwards is October 2 minus 3162. And here the nakshatra is Shravanam.
Perfect. So again, flipping the nakshatras.
Yes.
I mean, you can see very clearly, you see this Shravana to Pushya business, for some reason, I don't know why all these researchers, they are saying there is and this particular researcher, I think this particular research maintains that there is a transcribing error or interpolation or some sort of mistranslation or scribing error. I mean, but if you start assuming all those things, there is no ending at where you'll end. I mean, I can basically then say every one of those is an error. The whole text is erroneous. Then in that case, why should the Pandavas win the war? Why shouldn't the Kauravas win the war? That is also an error, because history is written by the victors, we can say, and then we can change. So, I mean, if I start doing all this, then we can. So Aditya will perhaps like to, come in on this one. I don't know if he's there for a moment, but yeah, there he is. So Aditya, a lot of researchers maintain that there is some kind of transcribing and error and all these things. So I was just saying, well, in that case, we can even make the Kauravas win the war.
So Sanskrit is very mathematical language. You change
Right.
one word, you have to change 10 other shlok also. So
Perfect.
it's not just one. English you can do anything. Put, put. But Sanskrit is not like that. Sanskrit is totally phonetic, and one matra change means totally meaning. Panchashat, panchashat, two different
Right.
meanings.
Right.
Just add it,
Right.
like that.
Right. And absolutely, you see, now that comes from somebody who has studied Sanskrit for long time. You see, that perspective. You see, and that is the verse. You see, when you say Pushyena samprayatosmi shravane punaragataha, the way. I mean, how is it going to change? So the problem is not just that there is one verse. There are actually two verses. Rohinde gate shure Pushyena madhusudana is the other verse. So it is clear he is going on Pushya. So no matter what it is, that war theory has to prove that Pushya Nakshatra start is occurring. And if Pushya Nakshatra start is not occurring, then it is a huge problem, because it means that the war nakshatras for the year have been flipped or changed, and the whole theory falls apart, because the war timeline, pilgrimage timeline are together. This creates a huge problem, massive problem. I mean, I'm sure Aditya ji agrees that we should not be doing those things. Verse is saying Pushya to Shravana, show me Pushya to Shravana. That's all I am saying. Am I right, Aditya ji?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
So we have shown
also
you three theories where it is completely wrong. I don't know which other theory you've got over here. You've got quite a few, I mean, but
Yeah.
we'll see. Why don't we go to 3138?
Okay.
Let's go to 3138 for a moment. So let us go
So
for, I mean, there are two pairs we have got there, but let's go for
yes.
one. Let's go for one of them, any one of them you like. Yeah.
Okay. So Pushya of pair 2 that ends on Uttarashadha, basically.
Right. So let's go for that one.
Uh,
Yeah. So here the problem is a bit different. So if we take December 16th of that particular year, minus 3137 to be the start, and let us say that is, Uttarashadha, basically, are we saying that is ending here or starting here? That's the other thing.
Ending.
Right. So let us say it is ending over here. Then also we have got a peculiar problem. And what happens if we go to the first one over there? What is the thing? So it is ending on Uttarashadha. It is not ending on Shravana anyway.
So when it is starting, okay. So it is starting basically on November 5.
Right. So if we start it on a Pushya, it will end on a Uttarashadha. That is the problem.
Yes.
And that particular thing is already day 42, 43, if I'm not wrong. So, yes. I mean, the problem is to fit it exactly becomes a huge problem. Anyway, in 3138 BC, that is not actually the theory. I think the theory is that it is occurring much before. So again, there is a problem.
Yes. So there is
another pair. Yeah, exactly. That so I think if we start it on October 9th, which is a Pushya, then where does it end?
So it ends on November 19.
Yeah. So again, that is again a Uttarashadha. So no matter what you actually do, basically it doesn't actually end the way you want it to do. And this one ends a couple of days after that, so it is a Shukla Dvitiya. So it again
Yes.
makes it a particular problem. Anyway, all these theories fail on multiple other angles.
Yes,
So
and
that is
in
a
Bhishma Moksha exceeds 58 nights if we consider this particular date of ending in this.
right. And if you which was the other date? Which was the other ending on this particular thing? The other
Other
one you showed me
uh,
was
other ending was November 5.
yeah. Now that is also wrong basically. So November 5
Uh,
ending. Well, November
I'm
5
sorry, I'm
to where
sorry.
is it?
It was starting. It was starting. Ending was on December 16. I'm sorry, December 16.
December 6th. Exactly,
December
exactly.
16. Yes.
Now you see, the problem there will be the Bhishma Moksha will actually get into very, very serious difficulties from
Yes.
this particular point. That extra 4 days, you see, makes it a impossibility. Anyway, right. Fine. So that I think we have sort of completed this particular thing. I don't know if there's any other date. Why not try 3143? I think 3143 does exactly the same thing
Okay,
if I'm not
so
wrong. If you got it, no.
I have 3139, 3140, for example.
3139, let's see. I think
Okay.
3139 is got a interesting one because 3139 is the
Yes.
traditional date which has been ascribed. And there the problem is quite a problem. What the problem is that the 14th night of the war should be a bright crescent moon. It should be a visible moonrise. The problem is if the war ends on a Shukla Chaturthi, on the fourth day of the waxing half, then the 14th night of the war will be an Amavasya or a new moon day, and there will be no moonrise seen. So that is a problem which assails this particular theory, the invisible moonrise problem,
Correct.
and that happens in quite a few places as well, right? So I think we'll stop this for a moment, and
Okay.
so you can see that if you analyze it, each and every part of the Mahabharata, and analyze every theory bit by bit, you will find that almost no theory will pass your rigorous criteria. So either they will flip the nakshatras, or they will flip the moon phases, or their 14th night moonrise will not be visible, or their 14th night moonrise will be, for example, just prior to the Amavasya, it will be like K14, Krishna Chaturdashi, which is basically the 14th bit of the dark moon. So all these things create huge problems for any Mahabharata theory. And Mahabharata is like a quicksand. If you step anywhere out of the way of Vyasa's verses, you land up in quicksand and you remain there. Actually, that is the problem. It is very difficult to pull you out. So we can stop the screen share now, I think.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I don't know if Aditya wants to sort of come back, and because I think we have spent around an hour, so we should probably not exceed too much.
It can go on and on. Like you said in the beginning, I love these topics, and it's a great these kind of philosophical research is far better than mental speculators. Mental speculators can only go crazy. There are so many mental speculators out there, but philosophical research is what we need. And one thing I can say about Mahabharata and Ramayana is there's so many astronomical evidences being produced in the scriptures itself that it is difficult for any mathematical minded person to ignore them. It is difficult. It requires a real craziness to come up with some crazy numbers, real craziness.
I
In
just want to show one interesting thing, which if Aditya allows me, I'll just
Sure,
share my
sure, please
screen.
go ahead.
Just for a second, I want to show it.
Yeah.
Just one thing I want to show, which is basically what exactly does the one second. What exactly does it look like? You see, because people often wonder what exactly is he talking about, and I just want to show you what he's talking about. What it is. If we show you, this is from Redshift, and I'm trying to show you is over here. This is the end of Pisces, and that is Altarf over there, and that will be Altair over there. So this is Altarf or Pushya. This is Altair or Shravana. So if we are going about it methodically, then Krishna must start on Revati Nakshatra from Upaplavya. Then he must go and halt in the middle at Vrikasthala, but then he goes and reaches Hastinapur. And then there's the first lunar eclipse at night. And then from there, he must go to the first Pushya, which is that first star, green star appearing in the sky at Altarf, the first Altarf. That is where the talks are going to fail with Duryodhan. Duryodhan will then send off his kings to Kurukshetra. And from there, the time must go by a little bit of time where Uttara Falguni or Purva Falguni, sometimes it is, depending on the software, but Krishna will basically ride with Karna, and that is going to happen there. Then they must reach Anuradha Nakshatra. At Anuradha Nakshatra, Balarama will go and come and visit. So just before this Jyeshtha will come Anuradha Nakshatra, Balarama will come and visit Krishna, get upset, and start pushing off and making preparations for the pilgrimage. The Jyeshtha at which he's speaking about is a Amavasya or a new moon day. That particular time is where basically the war preparations must start. That is where a solar eclipse will occur. That is a solar eclipse over there. And then you will come all the way around and find another lunar eclipse which is there. And that is why it is mentioning the eclipses, the two eclipses in a fortnight, and the prediction of a third eclipse. So that is your third eclipse which is occurring over there. And those are the three eclipses which are occurring before the war. And some people have tried to say that no, those are not eclipses. But the word in Sanskrit is grasta ekama trayodashim. Grasta, so to swallow, basically, which is the word which is used in Sanskrit to denote eclipses. So there is no escaping it. Those were eclipses and they were occurring before the war. And in fact, vast majority of Mahabharata researchers agree on those particular shlokas. The so-called two eclipses within 13 days, which is not really 13 days, but 13 tithis, you can say, which actually comes to around 14 days, which is what we are proving over here. Right. So, yeah, Aditya I will stop the screen share and then we can.
It's a great discussion, and I think we should do more on Ramayana. And I think it's based on the questions that I see right now, I don't see any questions.
Questions,
because most of the people are hearing for the first time, and so it's difficult to grasp it because many of them have not heard the term Pushya and
Pushya Altarf, Shravana Altair, Pushya Altarf in Cancer, Shravana Altair Capricorn.
Right. So maybe the questions will come, but one comment has come,
right,
that whatever they have been told about their history is far minuscule as compared to what they are seeing right now, the years and the time frame that we're talking about. And which is true, because most of the Western education has created more dumb people, to be precise, over there, rather than but there are a lot of advances in terms of other scientific modern inventions such as iPhones and rockets. But in terms of antiquity of history, India definitely stands very high. So there are no questions right now from the audience generally, but people who are watching on the YouTube, do comment over there so we can take up those questions in the next show. I'm going to pull Manish ji again and again. Last time he escaped for 3 months, which is, I won't let that happen again. I can guarantee you that.
Well, we'll get Shivansh as well this time. We'll get Shivansh as well this time. So it just makes it easier for me, rather than speaking continuously in a monotone. And then, me and Aditya ji know exactly what we are talking about, but everybody else is what exactly is he talking? What is Pushya? What is Shravana? So Altarf and Altair, correct. Very important. Altarf to Altair, and it cannot be just happening once. The problem is they have to go around the zodiac once. So Altarf to Altair, 42 days. This is very important.
In the last show, Manish ji made me buy a very expensive software, which I never used after that show, to be precise.
Well, I mean, Redshift is not that expensive, is it? Is it expensive? Really?
No, it's not really.
Yeah, it is okay. Yeah. But it's Redshift is well worth the money for some things. Cyber Sky is very cheap and runs on Windows. and is very useful for other things, but you need a more powerful computer for CyberSky as compared to Redshift, is what I've found. And Jehora is the one of the best softwares. But please read my book before that. There are 2 books I've written. The third is on the way. On first one is 3067 BC, Fresh Perspective of the Mahabharata War, which is free on academia and has gone viral. I'm happy to say. You're always quite happy when your free, suppose your book, which was supposed to be free on a niche topic, starts getting file shared. So that is always a good sign.
Right.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
My focus is on the narrative, and I can tell you that being supported by scholars like Manish Pandit is a great honor, because my focus is on correcting the mistranslations, because people read Sanskrit and they make assumptions, and assumptions we all know, ASSUME, making an ass of you and me. So assumptions have a assumptions have a very little play in the scientific community, but we can make hypotheses. So hypothesis is something which you make an hypothesis and either prove it wrong or prove it right. So, and that's how it works. So thank you all for joining on a Saturday morning, and it's a great honor to have all of you. You'll see this video live shortly, and don't and next time when we come, we'll bring in more humor also, as usual, in Manish Panditji. Thank you. Namaskar. And thank you, Shivansh, for joining.
Thanks a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Namaskar.